prayer, we need to make sure that we back from her trip. Terry and I will be traveling with Andy and Linda early tomorrow morning. We're going out to Missouri for a few days this week, and we'll be back. So if you would remember us in our travels. Some of you were here early enough. I mentioned Jim Lindsay yesterday morning. He was up on some scaffolding working at his house and fell off and broke his back. He fractured L1 and L2. I think that's what best I remember. And he's down in Grady right now. So hopefully his recovery won't be too extended. Get some relief from his pain, but we'll find out a little more as the day goes by. They were waiting on some tests yesterday afternoon. Anybody else that we know we might need to remember in our prayers?
Remember Larry Rose.
Larry Rose is recovering from his appendicitis and his surgery there. He's getting better. And he's fixing to travel. His mom's funeral will be coming up this Friday up north, so let's remember Larry Rose as well. Anybody else? Let's remember Graham as he's traveling throughout our country right now. We talked to him yesterday. He was out in Middle Texas on his way to see Dave Rogers. They were going to have lunch together in his travels. But he's got another week or so. He comes back to our side of the world next Sunday night, and then he leaves next Monday to go back home to Scotland. So he's got another couple thousand miles to drive. All right. If there's nobody else, let's begin with a word of prayer, okay? Our God, our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for the day that you've given us to wake up and enjoy the beauty of your creation, the sun that shines around us, and all the growth of beautiful flowers and things that come. But Heavenly Father, we know that this is a temporal place. We enjoy the beauty while we're here, but there also comes physical ailments and suffering. We pray that you would be with those that we've mentioned, Jim and Larry, as they have those physical ailments. We pray that you'd be with those that have lost loved ones as of late. Father, you know who they are, and we remember many of them. That this life is short, so we never know what will happen. We know that we can enjoy this life. It might not be easy, but you promised us an eventual home in heaven and with you if we've only been obedient to your will. Father, not because of anything that we've done, but because of the love that you had for us and the sacrifice of your Son. And that would be Jesus. And in his name we ask this prayer. Amen. All right. As we continue our study, we are in the book of James. We are in the 3rd chapter. As I mentioned at the end of last week, we're probably not going to finish it. We've only got a couple more weeks left to try to do the last couple of chapters, and we may not make that. But I will publish all the lessons on Lightpost app when the quarter is over. So if you want to go back and look at any of the lessons that we didn't have, or if you want to print them out for your own, you're welcome to do so. But they'll be posted on the Lightpost app if you so desire. And if you'd rather just have a copy of them, a couple of you had mentioned that, I don't mind printing a copy of each and every one of them for you and putting it in a booklet or something for your study and reference later. But we can do that. But as we continue our discussion this week, we're in the 3rd chapter. In the 3rd chapter, we've been talking about teachers in verse 1. And we talked about the public teaching. We talked about the private teaching one-on-one, and our example as being a form of that teacher. And there were many back in the times that this writer was talking about that there were people who were teaching just didn't need to be teaching for whatever reason. And a lot had to do with their motives that they had behind it. They got to talking about what they were saying and the tongue and the words that they were using. And it's one of those things that as we delve into it, we find that words can be very powerful. They can uplift us, they can edify us, but they can also tear us down very quickly. So we need to be cautious and careful with our words. We were finishing up last week, and we were talking about in verse 8 It said that no man can tame the tongue. And that's true. That wasn't a question. That was a statement. And we can guard ourselves. We can control ourselves, our tongue. But the slightest little slip sometimes can be very hurtful to someone else. So we need to always be on guard. We can control it as best we can, but no man can tame the tongue. And we were talking about the Siegfried and Roy, the big white tiger, you know, and how they thought it was tamed, got out of control for an instance, and it led to a terrible disaster there. But the tongue, as we know it, it's an unruly evil full of deadly poison. What does poison do for you?
Kill you.
Makes you happy? No. It'll kill you. That's right. That's why we call it poison. And sometimes it can hurt. If anybody ever eaten a Japanese blowfish, they say it's full of poison that will kill you. Now, if you eat it right, it won't kill you. You heard of that? I can't imagine somebody taking that risk.
Well, how in the world do you eat it right?
I don't know. I've never attempted
I
it.
mean, all you got to put it in your mouth and chew, so
I think
what you gonna do?
Well, I think it has more to do with somebody else in the preparation of it than it does in our consumption. But can you imagine just getting a drop of that poison in whatever the meat that they fillet and cut out, and just that one drop will kill you? Now, who figured that out? Okay, how many people had to die before they figured, we don't eat that one with a spiny tin? But yet that poison, it only takes a little bit to kill somebody. And our tongue has poison in it by the words that we say. We can maintain it, we can restrain it, but that least little drop of poison might come out, and it's very detrimental and harmful to somebody else. So we need to always be on guard. And that's where we ended up with last week in lesson 6. We were in verse 9, where it continues to talk about the tongue. And let's read a couple of verses here as our thoughts in this grouping of scriptures here. Beginning in verse 9 of chapter 3, with it, the tongue, we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring set forth fresh water and bitter from the same opening? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Thus no spring yields both salt water and fresh. When we look at verse 9, when it talks about with the tongue we can bless our God, looking at the Greek word there, eulogion or whatever it is, we get a lot of our words from the Greek root word. We get our word eulogy from this word. And what does that mean? It means to speak well of someone, kind of like we do at a funeral. You ever been to a funeral where somebody got up and said how sorry the deceased was? No, we don't do that. We don't do that. We always speak well of them. Now, for some people, it's real easy to do. You know, our brother David recently. It's real easy to speak well of that man. He's such a good man. But there are some people, you know good and well, there's not a lot of good things you can say about that person. But yet, we try to say those good things. But to bless, to speak well of somebody. But also, that same tongue can curse. The Greek words of that, to curse, you break it down. It's an address to God in the form of a prayer to bring down evil upon a man, to put a curse on somebody, to bring down evil upon a man. When doing so, in doing so, this places oneself higher than the other person. You ever thought about that? We talk about witches and putting curses on people, right? You know, I don't necessarily believe in witchcraft. Don't get me wrong. Don't take that the wrong way. But yet we've seen movies and stuff where they'll place a curse on somebody and bad things happen to them. Out of the same mouth, you can say good things and you can say bad things. There was a local DJ years ago, and I liked him. But yet sometimes he would just be the most uplifting person you could imagine on the radio, and the next few words, he'd have cuss words in there. And I thought, that ought not to be. But how do you have respect for somebody who says this and then turns around and says this? You can't. You lose a lot of that respect. Let's look at a couple of verses. Genesis chapter 1. When we talk about others, we're talking about a specific person. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. It says here, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. Male and female, that's a story for a different time though, but that's pretty simple, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But it says God created man in his own image. Can you imagine trying to curse something or say bad things about something that God made? Ever thought about that? You're talking about God. Flip over a couple of chapters there to Genesis chapter 5 and verse 1. Chapter 5, verse 1. This is the book of the genealogy of Adam. In the day that God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. Have you ever thought about that? You look like God. How exactly do you look like God?
Spiritually.
I would think spiritually, morally, ethically, maybe somewhat physically. I don't know. Don't know that we're going to know that answer because God is a spirit. We know that. It says that in John. But what's God look like? I don't know what your image of God is because we as humans have to attach a mental image, don't we? You ever thought about that? Picture in your mind right now, what does God look like? I don't know where it takes you. I remember years ago, I was thinking, I knelt to pray one time, and I tried to picture God. And I pictured the Lincoln Memorial. We had just been to Washington, D.C. or something. Standing before that, and Lincoln's bigger than life, and you're sitting at his feet. When we pray, we're sitting at the feet of God. We're looking up, we're looking down, but we're also seeing what's above us. And I got to thinking about that. Well, our God's bigger than the Lincoln Memorial. So it got bigger. And the Lincoln Memorial, what color is it? It's white. Purity, I get that. God is pure. So that white got bigger. I think God is bigger than this memorial. God is bigger than space. And that white just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, so much that I couldn't see anything other than that white. Our God is so big. Our God is so powerful that we can't even imagine what we do. But yet when we talk to Him, we sometimes talk to Him differently than we talk to other people, don't we? When we talk to other people, we're talking to the people that God made. We're talking to people that are made in the image of God. Would you really want to say something bad to God? No. Do you want to say something bad to something God made? I wouldn't think so. But yet we as humans sometimes we do. So we need to be cautious of our words and not be hypocritical. It says in verse 10, out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing, my brethren. These things ought not to be so. To be hypocritical. It can happen. I think we all do it, don't we? We don't do it intentionally. But yet sometimes we slip up. It happens. So, God understands that. God knows that. God made us. But yet, it ought not to be so. And in verse 11, James uses something that would be very familiar with the people of Palestine here. He talks about a spring, water that comes up out of the ground. You know, how could it be fresh and bitter in the same opening? There are springs in Palestine that spring fresh water that you can drink. It's potable. There are springs in Palestine that come up and it has salt water. Okay? Remember the map in your head there where you see the Sea of Galilee and it runs down to the Dead Sea? Yeah? What can you do in the Sea of Galilee? You can swim in, you can drink it, whatever. What about the Dead Sea?
That's why it's all dead.
That's why it's all dead. That's right. But anybody ever been down to Indian Springs?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sulfur water, shoot.
What's wrong with that water? That's healthy water.
Well, it may be, but I'm not drinking it.
My grandmama used to take plastic jugs down there. We'd go down there and she'd fill them up. What's it smell like?
So,
Rotten eggs.
Rotten eggs, that's right. It has a heavy sulfur smell. It smells like rotten eggs. You ask anybody that's ever been down there, they'll give you the same answer. It smells like rotten eggs. Can you imagine drinking that stuff? Now, there are many people who believe it has medicinal purposes, just like my
I
grandmother.
was gonna say, what did your grandmother do with it?
She drank it. She drank it. Well, you have to remember though, this was a few years ago before we had bottled water. And I say a few years ago, my grandmother was older than I am. Okay? She lived up here in North Fayette County and they had a well. And the water came out of the ground. Papa pumped it out of the well into the house. Well, my grandmother had those aluminum drinking glasses. Anybody ever drank out of those aluminum drinking glasses?
yeah.
Oh man, you could put any kind of water in that and it was nasty. So she was used to drinking nasty water. It didn't bother her. But yet, she believed that it was good for you. And we do sometimes do things that we think are good for us that may or may not be. I don't think it was bad because it has minerals and nutrients in it, right? We take vitamins all the time, do we not? Yeah, sulfur is one of those things that we have to have some of. Now, as with anything else, in excess might not be so good. But yet, it's just nasty. But it smells like rotten eggs. But Indian Springs has been there a long time. And it will never put out good water that everybody says, man, this is the best tasting. Not like Fiji. They say Fiji water is the best, right? That's what it says on the container that you buy it from. But Indian Springs will never have water come out of that well that tastes any different. Because that's just not the way God made it. You don't get the same thing. And that's the way our speech and our words and our tongue should be. We don't get it out of the same thing. So, looking at verse 12 as we move on. Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives? We know the answer to that. This is one of those questions that requires no response. If you saw a peach tree here in Georgia, would you expect to go pull an apple off of it? No. If you saw an apple tree here in Georgia, would you expect to go pull a peach off of it? Absolutely not. So it bears its own fruit. Let's look at Matthew for a second. Flip over to Matthew chapter 12. Matthew chapter 12. Matthew 12, verses 33 through 35. Here it says, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things. And an evil man out of the evil treasures brings forth evil things. Jesus said, but I say to you that for every idle word men may speak, they will give an account of it in the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. You ever thought about that? One day I'm going to stand before the Father, And I'm gonna have to answer for what I said. Good and bad. How many of us would rather have a long list of good things? Sure. You know, that's like going before the judge when you got a speeding ticket or something like that. Well, I don't normally speed, but that time I did, you know. I got called. But you're standing before a judge. Wouldn't you want that judge to be merciful on you? It's not a habit of yours. I know you don't normally speed, you know. Or they could say, well, this is the 14th time you've been here in the last year, so I think you're a habitual speaker. No, we're gonna stand before a judge. But when we stand before a judge, our God, for by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. It could happen one way or the other. Flip back a couple of chapters, Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7. Let's look at verse 16. You will know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. What do people think about you and your speech? I grew up in an industry, in the automotive industry, where I think guys must learn to cuss before they learn to work on cars. It was just habitual. It was commonplace and natural for them. I don't know how many times I heard people, when they would blurt something out in front of me, say, excuse my French. You ever heard that? What exactly does that mean?
Nothing.
I realize that you don't curse, that you don't approve of what they're doing, and they know it.
They know it.
Uh-huh.
They know it.
And they, by what they say, they know.
Yeah. But it comes out and they can't stop it because that's just the way they talk. Out of this mouth, that's gonna come. But yet there's some people that you're not gonna say that. They're not gonna hear you say that. Because you're not gonna tolerate it. But yet when they are in your presence, they say, excuse my French. Now, I'm a bit of a smart aleck a lot of times, and I would used to tell them, I know a little French, and that wasn't French. You know, and it kind of catches them off guard, but they think about it. And yes, I've heard people during mid-sentence stop because they're in the presence of somebody who may not tolerate that, who may not listen to that. That's not your lifestyle.
Isn't that great that there are people that realize your inner self and who you are, and they realize after their mouth runs, uh-oh, I just insulted one of God's creatures.
Yeah.
And that's what I look at it. And actually, in a way, it's a high compliment.
It is.
I mean, when I worked in a profession that was fairly, intellectual, I guess, but every once in a while somebody get carried away, and being in my position, as tech support giving them help, and they mess up, they would say something, and I say, what? And then it dawned on them.
Yeah.
And I said, that's the highest compliment a Christian can have, when somebody backs up and says, oh, he doesn't do that, or she doesn't accept that.
That's right.
That's my view on it, I think.
And I think that's rightfully so. And I think all of us should be commended for that when someone recognizes your presence, and that's just not something that you do. And it's a higher level that you hold yourself to, because I just said for many years, people who resort to those four-letter words just don't have a very good vocabulary, because they keep using those easy words, and a lot of times they don't mean a lot. It's just the way they are and come out. But it says here that these things ought not to be so. But it says here, when it's talking about the different kind of fruit coming out of the same tree, thus no spring yields both salt water and fresh. This is just a conclusion of the statement. It just makes no sense because it's against nature, and it summarizes those things. So we can conclude that, and we end that with saying, which are we? What do people think about us? How is our speech? How is our verbiage? How is our tongue that people are around us? Now, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? Absolutely. Because we are teachers. Remember, this whole chapter is talking about teachers. We are teachers. Whether it's in public or by example. Do you need a verse? Chapter 7? Number 7? Who else? You got a 7? Anybody need a 7? Anybody else? You got 7? All right, so now let's start on lesson number 7. It's just an extension of chapter 3. It's the last 5 or 6 verses of the chapter. So let's read verses 3 through 13 to orient ourselves as we continue this. Chapter 3, verse 13 through the end of the chapter. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. This wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and everything are there. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to shield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Let's remember, we're still, this whole group of thought here is talking about teachers and those people who were teaching and the words that they were using, and how wise were they in those words that they were picking, that they were using. We talk about wise. The Greek word from the original text is sophros. I don't know how to say that, but it means a teacher. And when it talks about wise and understanding, understanding is from the word epistemon, which means one skilled. So he's still talking about a person who has been teaching, a skilled teacher. Now, have you ever been in a setting where the teacher was unskilled? Yes, we all have, and many of you are teachers, and you try not to be that, and I try not to be that. I remember a movie one time where the teacher, I think it was a science class, he was very monotonistic, and he was taking roll. Bueller. Many of you remember that, but that was the way the class was gone, you know.
I mean, you went to sleep.
It would have been easy to go to sleep, right? And a lot of them did. So there's a difference in wise and understanding. Understanding means one skill. When we think about the book of Proverbs, we looked at this, I don't know, a couple of years ago in one of our classes upstairs. And the 3 words that I took from that whole study of the book of Proverbs was knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And if we think about, okay, Solomon was trying to instruct his children, particularly his sons and other children, about how to grow up. And we all do that. We have kids, right? We try to train them and get them away. But Solomon was giving all this instruction to his children, trying to teach them about knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, the ways of the world. So, what's the difference in those 3? What is knowledge?
Accumulation of facts.
That's right. The possession, the accumulation of facts. You know something, okay? I know that if I close that door, it'll get even hotter in here, okay? I know that. What is understanding?
Knowing why.
Yeah, understanding, knowing why. Okay, it's hot in here, but I know if I close that door, it's going to get even hotter, right? Well, what is wisdom?
Leave the door open.
Wisdom is the proper application of those facts. Yeah, I don't want it to get hotter in here, so I'm going to leave that door open. That's a very simple illustration, but how many times have you known smart people? People that may be very intelligent and have a lot of facts in their head. Very smart people, but they don't have a lot of common sense. Those are the kind of people you take to play trivia with, but that's about it, right?
Right.
Okay. Some people are so smart, but they're so dumb by genuine understanding of that. So, anyway, there are many smart people in the world. But the scripture tells us here that we demonstrate that. It says, let him show by good conduct that his works are done in meekness of wisdom. Okay, if you have knowledge, if you have understanding, if you have wisdom, show them. Do it. Going back to these teachers that were here, what were they teaching? We don't know, but yet they were not living the life that they were teaching, were they? That's why he's having this discussion. There were people who were shouldn't be there because they had the wrong motives in mind. But if you have that knowledge, if you have that understanding, if you have that wisdom, show it. Let him show it by good conduct. Good conduct is a result of that. God should get the glory. Good works is the inevitable fruit of wisdom. You ever thought about that? Good works is the inevitable fruit of wisdom. What is a fruit? Fruit is something that grows out of something else, right? Those peaches that we talked about on the peach tree, the apples on the apple tree. There's so many things that the scriptures talk about bearing fruit. We as Christians, what kind of fruit should we bear? Christians, right? That's our job. Something good is a result from that. So, God should get the glory from our good works. It's the inevitable fruit of that wisdom. I thought that was good. Christ is our example. Look at 1 Peter chapter 2. Don't have to go far. 1 Peter chapter 2. Let's look at verse 21. For to this you are called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that we should follow in his footsteps. Christ left us an example. Is it easy to follow his example? This means yes, this means no.
Maybe.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Maybe sometimes. I don't know that we have a clear, definitive answer for that question, do we?
No.
Because we're human, right? As a kid, little boys want to be like their father. Little girls want to be like their mother. And you learn those things. Those are behaviors that are learned. And the older we get, we think our parents are stupid. Why did I ever want to do that? And then we get even older than that, and we think, oh, they really weren't that stupid. They were smart. I want to be like them again. It's funny how we idolize people. We shouldn't. But yet we set people up on a pedestal. And I think that's part of our human nature that God gave us. When we go into the auditorium for a worship service, and you look around, and you see certain people, you ever thought to yourself, man, I wish I could be like them. I wish I could be like her. I wish I could be like him. You ever thought that? Or am I the only one?
No, you're not the only
I
one.
think we all do that. Why? We have a certain amount of humility that we feel like we can never be good enough. But yet we see somebody else, we don't see their faults. We see the good works that they do, the good people that they are, by their speech, by their actions. And that is definitely something to emulate. We should do this. Christ left us an example. Can we ever be as good as Christ was? No, that's an easy one to answer.
We need to try.
We need to try. You know, I think, and I'm pretty confident in this, God is not going to totally grade us on results when we stand before Him in that day. He's going to grade us on the attempt. Okay? Now, we must be obedient, but yet, none of us are perfect. It says in Romans, we all mess up. We all fall short of the glory of God. But yet, He left us an example. Let's look at Matthew chapter 11, verse 29. Matthew 11, verse 29. Matthew chapter 11, verse 29. We'll start in 28 because it's a complete thought here. Come to me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest to your soul. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Can you imagine the tone that Jesus said that in? It was not braggadocious, I'm sure. He was talking to his disciples. But it says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. What does he mean by that? What do we need to learn from Christ, our example?
That God's in charge mainly.
Say that again.
That God is in charge.
God is in charge. Jesus knew that God was in charge. You know, he said, if it's your will, I'm going to go through with this. Okay, but I know you're in charge. So we need to learn from his example that God is in charge. What else?
To obey.
Obey. Obey. Wow. Well, obey what? Obey what he said.
Yes.
Obey the word.
He had to obey.
He had to obey. He was a kid, right? Just like we are. He had to obey his earthly parents, but yet he had to obey his heavenly Father. Yeah. Even when the earthly side of him said, I don't really want to go through with this, but if it's your will, I'm going to do it. He had to obey. Learn from his example. We have to learn to love one another, do we not? John and 1 John is all filled with that we need to love each other, love one another, just as Christ loved the church. So, we need to learn from that example. That's part of that knowledge, that understanding, and that wisdom. Let me flip back here. James chapter 3. Lost my place here for a second. Verse 14. But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. Envy is a state or a condition of the heart. That's bitter lets us know which one it is. See, self-seeking ambition. Self-seeking ambition. Do we as humans do that? Yeah. We call it survival, right?
Yeah.
If you're about to die, inherently you're gonna
Hold on to it.
you're gonna hold on to it. You're gonna try everything you can do. It's self-seeking, self-preserving. And that's the way God made us. But yet there are some times when our will is not what needs to be done. It needs to be God's will. Bitter envy is not one of those. So the King James Version uses the word jealousy instead of self-seeking. Jealousy comes from the word zealous. It can be good or it can be bad. You ever thought about that? Jealousy can be good or it can be bad. If you look at the notes there, it says, desire to emulate others' good qualities, just like we were talking about a while ago. I wish I could be like them. Or jealousy also is a desire for others' experiences, achievements, or possessions. You can be jealous of what somebody else has or the way the lifestyle that they live. And that's bad. It all has to do with the way your heart perceives that. We should have that, but not be bitter. That tells us which one it is. We'll talk about a couple things here and we'll finish out. What does it mean to be bitter? What's bitter taste like to you? Hard to describe, isn't it? Now, if we taste something bitter, okay, now, I know a lot of us, we like things that are sweet, right?
Right.
I love sweet stuff. I love candies and cookies and ice cream and all that stuff. We know what sweet tastes like. But what about tart? Do you like things that are tart? Some of you do. Some of us don't. Okay. What about hot? Do you like hot sauce? Do you like peppers?
Yes, indeed.
Some people do, some people don't. Annie Graham loves them, the hotter the better. Okay. But what about bitter? Do you know anybody who likes something bitter?
Turnip greens.
Turnip greens are not bitter.
Yeah, they are.
They're nasty, but they're not
Nasty.
bitter.
I like them.
You know? I just remember as a kid cutting grass on a rainy day and under the bottom of the lawnmower, it looked like turnip greens. I'm not eating that stuff.
Crack open a pecan and get some of that stuff that's in
bitter
it. That's
part.
bitter.
Well, do you like bitter?
No, I take it out.
I don't know of anybody who likes bitter. Bitter, spew it out of our mouth.
But a certain amount.
Pardon?
A certain amount of bitter, you know, in a recipe, you're gonna have some things that give you a flavor that's different than sweet.
Do you have to?
Well, depends on what you like.
That's it. I think everybody likes different things. The point is, we like sweet. Some of us like tart. Some of us like hot, spicy. And nobody likes the bitter part of it. Coffee has a lot of bitterness to it. Some people like it black. Some people like it fluffed up with cream. Whatever. Why do they put the cream in it? To get that bitterness out. Nobody likes it. Bitter envy. We got two bad things. Let's abstain from it. Let's pick up there next week and we'll start there. Thanks for being here this morning. Good to see you.
Yeah.
I'm not even certain it's coffee, is it?
It's like that, the international delight.
Ray, I think Ray Russell's gonna be in this room.
It's like. And
It's gonna be strange.
Well, it will be one of them, and they do this one, because Steve is doing this in this classroom, that's where they're. Probably will be doing this one. Yeah, we've gotten away from having the class in the auditorium where you came here, so now we have 3 classrooms where it's a little easier. We have a problem with the microphone.
I will say we're
on it,
by that way,
so
so
when
it depends on if David.
Emmett will know it
Oh, yeah, you gotta work.
because we changed microphone during the
Ours
middle of
looks like a
class.
2-hour leave it on window.
Yeah.
And so I'll set it for.
It
4
does.
o'clock every
Technology
day.
is a
When he
wonderful
gets
thing.
home,
Oh, it is
when he
sometimes.
leaves the house, then he'll turn it back on for that 2 hours. And so when I get up at 6, it's still on.
At a reasonable time.
Yeah.
Still early in my book, but more reasonable than
We figured
before.
that one out. It works for the most part. But yes, I understand your dilemma that. I actually like K-cups because I like a big cup of coffee and
Yeah.
K-cups don't accommodate for that. That would be my dilemma
Yeah.
on a K-cup.
And they're not my favorite. I would rather have brewed coffee
Yeah.
anyway. But it just works. It's just convenient.
Yeah. Well, I think we're about to get moving. It's official over there.
I see 3 out of 4. We
I know,
gotta get going.
We out.
Either that or we're in trouble. Which could be the truth too.
Well, Well, this isn't the principal's office, so this is not normally where the trouble happens.
No, they got their office across there if they wanted it, yeah.
You get called in there, you know it's not good.
More than one.
Wait on the other, have to be
Well,
over.
doesn't say anything.
If I'm included in the meeting, I can.
Just felt like we had to respond to it. So,